Life doesn't always tap you on the shoulder gently. Sometimes it shakes you so hard that you feel the ground disappear beneath your feet. For Dwayne Johnson, that moment, the moment everything changed, wasn't wrapped in glory, success, or applause. It arrived in silence, in uncertainty, in the kind of darkness that forces you to confront who you really are and what you're truly made of. A wake-up call doesn't announce itself. It just hits. And when it does, you have two choices. Stay down and accept the version of yourself that life hands you, or rise up and build the version of yourself you know you are capable of becoming. That moment of impact, that split second when your back is against the wall, becomes the raw material for greatness if you choose to answer it. For him, everything changed the day he realized nobody was coming to save him. No one was going to knock on his door and hand him the life he dreamed about. No coach, no agent, no mentor, no family member. The world wasn't going to pause out of respect for his struggles. Life was still moving. Bills still had to be paid. Expectations were still there. Pressure was still real. And it was in that realization, painful, humbling, and sobering, that he found a new level of clarity. When you hit that point, when life strips away your excuses, your distractions, your comfort, what's left is the truth. And the truth is that everything you want starts with you. Your wake-up call might come from a failure, a heartbreak, losing a job, hitting financial disaster, or waking up one day realizing you've drifted far from the person you intended to be. Dwayne's came when he had $7 in his pocket and a future that looked more like a fog than a roadmap. That pain, that frustration, that disappointment, it didn't break him. It exposed him. It exposed the gap between who he was and who he needed to become. And that exposure wasn't something he ran from. He leaned into it. Because sometimes the lowest points in life aren't setbacks. They're turning points disguised as rock bottom. There's a moment when you look around and realize that complaining isn't going to change your situation. Hoping isn't enough. Wanting isn't enough. Dreams without action are nothing more than fantasies. And in that moment of pure honesty with yourself, you start to understand that life doesn't reward intentions, it rewards execution. That was a wake-up call. The understanding that your future is built by your choices, not your circumstances. That you can either surrender to the pressure or convert that pressure into power. The moment everything changed was not about the world believing in him. It was about him believing in himself, even when there was no evidence that things would get better. That's what makes a wake-up call powerful. It forces you to look beyond your current reality and tap into something deeper, something hungrier, something more determined than anything you've shown before. You stop waiting. You stop hesitating. You stop making excuses. You begin. Even if you start small, even if you're scared, even if you're unsure of how the path will unfold, you take the first step. And that first step is brutal. It's lonely. It's heavy. It's filled with doubt. But that first step is where transformation begins. People think success starts with opportunity. It doesn't. Success starts with a decision to take ownership of your life, a decision to stop running from discomfort and start using it, a decision to commit to the version of yourself you want to introduce to the world, a decision to stop looking at your past as a prison and start seeing it as a lesson. When Dwayne answered his wake-up call, he didn't magically gain confidence. He built it brick by brick through consistent action. He had every reason to quit, every reason to fall into bitterness, every reason to think life was unfair, but he didn't. Instead, he turned adversity into fuel. He let every setback light a fire inside him. That fire didn't just change his career, it changed who he was as a man. And this is the part most people overlook. Your wake-up call isn't just a moment. It's a starting point. It's a choice to become someone new. It's a promise that you will never again let life catch you sleeping. It's the commitment to stay hungry, stay aware, and stay grounded. Answering the wake-up call means looking at your life and saying, "This is on me." It means understanding that nobody owes you anything, not success, not recognition, not validation. Everything must be earned. And when you embrace that truth, a strange thing happens. Life becomes simpler, not easier, but clearer. You stop comparing yourself to others. You stop complaining about things outside your control. You stop wishing you were further ahead. Instead, you start focusing on what you can control, your effort, your attitude, your preparation, your discipline. The moment everything changed for him is the same moment that can change everything for you. The moment you decide your excuses are no longer welcome. The moment you stop blaming your past and start building your future. The moment you take nothing for granted and everything personally. The moment you stop waiting for perfect conditions. Start working with what you have. That's the wake-up call. It's not about punishment, it's about potential. It's about realizing that you have more inside you than the world has ever seen. And maybe that's exactly what you need right now. Maybe this is your wake-up call, to stop watching life happen and start creating it, to stop surviving and start rising, to stop dreaming and start doing. The moment everything changes begins the second you decide to change. Life will test you, break you, and challenge you, but if you answer the call, it will also mold you into someone stronger, wiser, and unstoppable. The question isn't whether you'll get your wake-up call. The question is whether you'll answer it. Rock bottom is not the end, it's the beginning. It is a place most people fear, a place they avoid, a place they hope they never reach. But the truth is, rock bottom can be the most powerful turning point of your life if you choose to use it. For Dwayne Johnson, hitting rock bottom didn't just test his strength, it revealed it. When everything feels like it's collapsing around you, when the plans you held so tightly fall apart, when the path you were so sure of suddenly disappears, you're forced to confront yourself in a way comfort could never demand. That confrontation is where transformation begins. It's where your real story starts. Standing in the middle of disappointment and uncertainty, he realized that rock bottom wasn't a punishment. It was a reset. It stripped away ego, stripped away assumptions, stripped away all the things he thought he needed. What remained was a raw, unfiltered version of himself. Hungry, humbled, and ready to rebuild. Most people try to avoid that rawness. They fear the discomfort, the vulnerability, the pressure. But it's in that pressure that new potential is forged. When life pushes you down, the one thing you control is how you get back up. That moment, that decision, becomes the foundation for everything that comes after. Turning rock bottom into momentum is not about pretending it doesn't hurt. It's not about acting strong or suppressing emotions. It's about facing your reality head-on and choosing not to let it define you. The pain becomes a teacher. The disappointment becomes fuel. The failures become the blueprint of what not to repeat. Rock bottom forces you to ask questions you might have avoided your whole life. Questions like, who do I want to be? What am I willing to fight for? What am I willing to sacrifice? What excuses have I been hiding behind? These questions hurt, but they bring clarity. And clarity is what creates direction. Dwayne's lowest point became the exact moment he decided he would not allow life to dictate his outcome. When you're stripped of everything, you become dangerous. Not because you have nothing to lose, but because you finally understand what matters. Rock bottom removes distractions. It reveals priorities. It pushes you to think bigger, work harder, and build stronger. When his football career ended abruptly, when the dreams he had invested years into vanished overnight, he had every reason to give up. But instead of surrendering, he chose reinvention. This is the essence of momentum, taking a painful moment and turning it into the first push forward. People assume momentum comes from success, but that's not true. Real momentum comes from pressure, from failure, from pain. When you decide to move forward despite fear, despite uncertainty, despite not having all the answers, that's when momentum begins to build. It starts with one decision, then one action, then one day of consistency, and once it starts rolling, it becomes harder to stop. For Dwayne, that meant diving into work, training, discipline, and self-improvement, even when the future was unclear. Momentum doesn't require perfection, it requires effort. Even small effort, especially small effort. When life knocks you down, you have a choice to stay on the floor or rise with intention. That choice is where momentum begins. Many people don't realize how much power they have in those moments. They believe rock bottom is a place to wait for rescue. But Dwayne realized that no rescue was coming. There was only him, his hands, his mind, his discipline, his will. Once you accept that nobody is responsible for your life but you unlock a different level of drive. You stop waiting for opportunities and start creating them. You stop hoping for change and start becoming the change. The beautiful part is that rock bottom gives you a clean slate. You're no longer tied to old expectations or old fears. When everything falls apart, you're free to rebuild from a stronger foundation. You're free to reinvent yourself in ways you never would have dared if things had worked out the first time. Sometimes life has to take everything from you so you can finally step into who you were meant to become. That's not punishment, that's preparation. It's shaping you, strengthening you, sharpening you. And once you begin to rise from that place, you rise differently. You rise tougher, you rise wiser, you rise more grateful. Momentum built from rock bottom is different from momentum built from comfort. It has weight, it has purpose, it has fire. It becomes a promise you make to yourself that you will not waste the second chance life has given you. Every workout, Every audition, every small step forward became a way for him to reclaim his identity and build a future he believed in, even before anyone else believed in it. That's how momentum grows, through quiet, consistent, determined action when nobody is watching and nobody is clapping. There is a point when your past pain becomes your present strength, when you stop looking at rock bottom as the worst moment of your life and start seeing it as the turning point that shaped everything, when what once embarrassed you becomes what empowers you, when you realize that every downfall you've survived adds bricks to the foundation of your rise. The more you endure, the harder you become to break. Rock bottom doesn't mean your story is over. It means a new chapter is starting. One written with intention instead of expectation, discipline instead of doubt, purpose instead of fear. You can turn your lowest moment into the most powerful force in your life if you choose to move, if you choose to fight, if you choose to believe that where you are now is not where you will stay. Because in the end, momentum is not given, it's created. And the hardest moments often create the strongest beginnings. Building a relentless mindset doesn't happen when life is easy. It doesn't happen when everything is going your way, when people support you, or when circumstances feel comfortable. A relentless mindset is forged in the moments when life hits hard, when you're overwhelmed, when the plan falls apart, when the pressure feels unbearable. That's where grit is born. That's where character is shaped. That's where a different version of you starts to emerge. One that refuses to quit, refuses to break, and refuses to let temporary pain decide your permanent future. For Dwayne Johnson, this mindset wasn't a motivational slogan. It was survival. It was the only choice he had if he wanted to rise from the setbacks and disappointments that once threatened to define him. There is a very specific moment life gives you a choice. You can either fold under the weight of your circumstances, or you can stand up and push back harder. Most people don't realize how powerful that moment is. They don't see it as a crossroads. They see it as an ending. But a relentless mindset begins the moment you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What can I do about this?" That shift changes everything. It shifts you from a victim to a fighter. It shifts you from passively accepting your conditions to actively shaping your path. You're no longer waiting. You're working. You're no longer hoping. You doing. You're no longer wishing. You're building. Life hit Dwayne Johnson hard long before success ever found him. Rejection, failure, financial struggle, unexpected loss, public embarrassment, dreams being ripped away. These experiences could have broken him. They break most people. But instead of letting pain harden his heart, he let it harden his resolve. A relentless mindset isn't about being emotionless or pretending you don't feel pain. It's about not letting that pain dictate your decisions. It's about waking up every single day knowing that you're fighting a battle most people don't see and choosing to keep throwing punches anyway. When life hits hard, it reveals the truth about who you are. It exposes weaknesses you've ignored. It exposes excuses you've allowed. It exposes habits you've outgrown. And while that exposure is uncomfortable, it's also necessary. You cannot grow into the strongest version of yourself without confronting the parts of you that are holding you back. Pain brings those parts to the surface. And if you're willing to face them, to work through them, to transform them, you become unstoppable. Dwayne didn't just endure hardship. He studied it. He learned from it. He used it as a mirror to understand what needed to change within him. A relentless mindset is built through repetition. It's built through showing up on days when motivation is nowhere to be found. It's built in empty gyms, late nights, early mornings, and silent battles within your own mind. It's not glamorous. It's not exciting. It's not pretty. It's discipline. It's uncomfortable. It's lonely. But that loneliness is where most growth happens because it forces you to depend on your own drive rather than external validation. That's where Dwayne separated himself from the crowd. While others waited to feel inspired, he took action. While others complained about their circumstances, he adapted. While others doubted themselves, he doubled down. People often ask how to become mentally strong, how to stay focused, how to keep going when life feels overwhelming. The answer is simple but not easy. You build strength by doing hard things. Not once, but consistently. You build strength by refusing to negotiate with your excuses. You build strength by pushing past the point where most people stop. The truth is, you don't develop a relentless mindset in comfort. You develop it in chaos. You develop it when everything inside you wants to quit, but you keep going anyway. You develop it when you realize that your actions determine your future, not your circumstances. When life hits hard, your response becomes your identity. Some people run, some people hide, some people freeze. But the ones who break through, the ones who rise, are the ones who lean into the difficulty and say, "This will not defeat me." That sentence, when spoken consistently through your actions, becomes a force, it becomes a shield, it becomes a driving engine inside you. Dwayne built that engine during the darkest moments of his life, and that engine carried him into opportunities that would have been impossible without the mindset he forged under pressure. The key to a relentless mindset is understanding that obstacles are not roadblocks, they are training grounds. Each setback is shaping you for the next level. Each disappointment is preparing you for your breakthrough. Each challenge is sharpening your skills, your patience, your discipline, your self-belief. When you start seeing adversity as preparation instead of punishment, you unlock a level of resilience that most people never tap into. That's what Dwayne learned. That's what carried him through failure after failure until success finally became inevitable. You cannot control when life hits hard. You cannot control what challenges appear. But you can control your response, and your response determines everything. If you choose to rise, to adapt, to push forward, to rebuild, to fight harder, you develop a mentality that becomes impossible to break. You stop being thrown around by circumstances and start steering your life with intention. This is the true meaning of relentless. It's not that you don't fall, it's that you rise every single time stronger than before. A relentless mindset doesn't guarantee an easy life. It guarantees that no matter how hard life hits, you will always hit back harder. You will always find a way. You will always keep moving. Eventually, life has no choice but to give way to someone who refuses to stop. Discipline is not glamorous. It's not exciting. It's not something people celebrate on social media, and it's not something that feels good every day. But discipline is the single greatest superpower you can develop if you want to change your life. It's the difference between dreaming and doing, between wanting and achieving, between intention and transformation. For Dwayne Johnson, discipline wasn't just part of the process. It was the process. It was the anchor he held on to when life was chaotic, when doubts crept in, when pressure mounted, and when the future felt uncertain. Discipline is what carried him through storms that would have broken most people. Most people don't fail because they're not motivated. They fail because they can't stay disciplined when motivation fades. Motivation is fleeting. It comes and goes, and you can't build a future on something that unreliable. But discipline is constant. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. Discipline doesn't wait for inspiration. Discipline doesn't take days off. It becomes a commitment you make to yourself, a promise that your actions will be stronger than your excuses. When you build that level of control over your mind and your habits, you become unstoppable. Life will always test you. It will test your patience, your resilience, your confidence, your faith in yourself. But the one thing it will test more than anything else is your discipline. When the world gets loud, discipline keeps you focused. When you face setbacks, discipline keeps you steady. When fear knocks, discipline keeps you moving. And when the path isn't clear, discipline gives you something solid to stand on. That is why it becomes your greatest superpower. Not because it makes the journey easy, but because it makes you strong enough to complete the journey. For Dwayne Johnson, discipline started as a necessity. Growing up in uncertainty, facing financial struggles, watching doors close, and feeling the weight of failure, he discovered early that talent alone wasn't enough. Potential wasn't enough. Even passion wasn't enough. You need structure. You need habits. You need a system that keeps you moving forward even when your emotions try to pull you backward. The gym became that system for him. The early mornings, the intense training, the repetition, the routine. It wasn't about building muscle. It was about building discipline. Every workout was a message to himself. I control how hard I work. I control how much I grow. I control what I become. This is what so many people misunderstand. Discipline is not something you turn on when life gets hard. Discipline is something you build before life hits you, so that when the storm comes, you're already prepared. It's like strengthening a muscle. The more you train it, the more powerful it becomes. And just like any muscle, if you don't use it, you lose it. That's why discipline requires consistency, not perfection. You don't have to do everything right every day. You just have to keep showing up. You just have to keep choosing progress over comfort. You just have to keep moving forward, even if that progress is small. People often think discipline is restrictive, but the truth is the opposite. Discipline is freedom. Freedom from chaos, freedom from self-doubt, freedom from the version of you that keeps you stuck. When you live without discipline, your emotions dictate your life. You eat based on cravings, you work based on mood, you move based on convenience, and you give up based on fear. But with discipline, you take back your power. Your actions are no longer controlled by how you feel in the moment. They're guided by the future you're committed to creating. That's real freedom. The toughest part of building discipline is the beginning. The first day you decide to change. The first morning you wake up early. The first time you say no to something comfortable. The first time you push through exhaustion. That's where most people fall off. They want results without routine. They want success without sacrifice. They want transformation without discomfort. But discipline demands you to step into discomfort willingly. It requires you to embrace the grind, to do the things you don't want to do, to push through the resistance that tries to keep you average. But here's the beauty. The more disciplined you become, the more powerful you feel. You start trusting yourself. You start believing in your own ability to follow through. You start proving to yourself that you are capable of doing hard things. And once you realize that, everything changes. You begin to operate on a higher level, not because life gets easier, but because you get stronger. Discipline transforms your identity. It turns you from someone who tries into someone who commits, someone who hopes into someone who executes, someone who dreams into someone who achieves. Even in the moments when Dwayne was overlooked, doubted, or rejected, discipline kept him steady. When opportunities seemed scarce, discipline created new ones. When uncertainty surrounded him, discipline gave him direction. That internal structure became the foundation for his entire life. Without it, none of the success, none of the breakthroughs, none of the accomplishments would have been possible. Discipline is the multiplier. Everything else becomes more effective because of it. A disciplined mind is dangerous. It doesn't bend easily. It doesn't break quickly. It doesn't run from challenge. Instead, it leans in, knowing that every challenge is shaping something stronger inside. It's a mind that understands the long game. It's a mind that stays patient through the process. It's a mind that values growth over comfort, consistency over convenience, and purpose over pleasure. When discipline becomes your superpower, you stop depending on external motivation. You stop relying on luck. You stop waiting for the right moment. You become your own engine. You move with intention. You pursue goals with intensity. You rise from setbacks faster, and you build a life that reflects your effort, not your excuses. In the end, discipline isn't about what you do. It's about who you become. And when you master it, you become someone who can handle anything life throws at you. You become someone who doesn't quit. Someone who stays committed, someone who rises above circumstance, someone who creates results instead of hoping for them. That is what discipline unlocks. That is why it's your greatest superpower. Outworking your old self is the most important battle you will ever fight, because the person you used to be is the only real competition that matters. Not the people around you, not the strangers on social media, not the coworkers, classmates, or critics who judge your every step. The real fight is internal. It's between who you were yesterday and who you're trying to become today. That gap, the space between your past self and your future potential, is where transformation happens. And that gap doesn't close by accident. It closes through effort, discipline, and the willingness to outwork the version of you that settled, quit early, got distracted, or relied on excuses. Dwayne Johnson learned this early in his journey. The only way to grow is to outperform the person you were before life shook you, humbled you, or tried to break you. Everybody wants to transform. Everybody wants a better life. Everybody wants strength, success, confidence, stability, and purpose, but very few are willing to give up the habits and mindsets that keep them stuck. You cannot grow into your future while clinging to your past. You cannot become the stronger version of yourself while living with the patterns of the weaker one. This is why outworking your old self is so important, because your old self is always waiting to pull you back to comfort, waiting to remind you of your fears, waiting to convince you that you're not capable. You rise above by proving through action, not words, that your future matters more than your past. There is a moment in everyone's journey when you realize your old habits won't carry you to the next level. What once was enough is no longer enough. What once kept you safe now keeps you stagnant. What once felt comfortable now feels limiting. This realization is painful, but it's necessary. It forces you to confront the truth. Your life won't change until you do. And change doesn't happen through inspiration alone. It happens through hard, intentional work. It happens by pushing yourself past the point where your old self would have stopped. One of the most powerful lessons Dwayne Johnson shares is that you can't negotiate with your old self. You can't reason with it. You can't compromise with it. That version of you will always choose the easier path. It will always sabotage your progress if you let it, so you have to outwork it. You have to build discipline so strong that laziness doesn't stand a chance. You have to build habits so consistent that excuses become irrelevant. You have to build focus so sharp that distractions lose their power. This is the difference between staying the same and transforming into someone better. Growth is not a switch you flip. It's a process you repeat. Every day provides a new opportunity to outperform the person you were yesterday. A little stronger, a little smarter, a little more disciplined, a little more committed. Small daily wins compound into massive transformation. Dwayne didn't transform his life overnight. He showed up again and again, even when nobody believed in him, even when circumstances gave him every reason to quit, even when his dreams felt far away. He outworked the version of himself that wanted shortcuts, that wanted comfort, that wanted validation. And over time, the disciplined version of himself became the dominant one. This is one of the most important truths about transformation. Repetition builds identity. The more you choose the stronger version of yourself, the more permanent that version becomes. You stop identifying with the quitter. You stop identifying with the fearful one. You stop identifying with the undisciplined one. You start seeing yourself as someone who follows through, someone who gets things done, someone capable of doing hard things. That identity shift is what carries you forward long after motivation fades. Outworking your old self also means being brutally honest with your weaknesses. You can't fix what you refuse to face. And most people avoid self-reflection because it forces them to acknowledge the habits, excuses, and patterns that are keeping them stuck. But Dwayne talks openly about facing his own flaws, fears, and failures. He didn't hide from them. He confronted them head on. That honesty allowed him to build a stronger foundation. Weakness doesn't disappear by ignoring it. It disappears by attacking it, improving it, and turning it into strength. A big part of outworking your old self is learning to embrace discomfort. Your old self wants comfort. It wants the path of least resistance. But growth requires the opposite. It requires sacrifice, discipline, and delayed gratification. It requires doing the hard things first. Waking up early, training with intensity, working long hours, saying no when you want to say yes, holding yourself accountable, even when nobody is watching. These are the moments that separate the old you from the new you. These are the moments that build resilience and toughness. Another powerful truth is that your old self is built on emotion, and your new self must be built on intention. The old you makes decisions based on how you feel. The new you makes decisions based on where you're going. Feelings fluctuate, but intention is solid. Feelings are temporary, but purpose is permanent. The moment you choose intention over emotion, you take control of your life. Outworking your old self is not about being perfect. It's about being committed. Some days you will struggle. Some days you will stumble. That's part of growth. But the new you does not quit. The new you gets back up. The new you keeps going. Every time you rise after falling, you widen the gap between who you were and who you're becoming. People often wonder how Dwayne built such an extraordinary work ethic. The answer is simple. Pain was his catalyst, and discipline became his weapon. He knew that the only way to build a different life was to build a different version of himself. And every day, he made choices that aligned with the future he wanted, not the past he left behind. That is the essence of real transformation. A daily decision to choose growth over comfort, action over excuses, effort over ease. When you outwork your old self, you step into the version of yourself that is capable of greatness. You begin to live a life shaped by intention, not impulse. And eventually, you look back and realize that the person you used to be could never survive the life you're building now. Creating a life worth fighting for begins with a decision to stop living passively, to stop accepting the bare minimum, and to stop drifting through your days without intention. It's the commitment to build something meaningful, something powerful, something that reflects the potential inside you instead of the fears that have been shaping your choices. Dwayne Johnson learned this truth long before fame, success, or opportunity found him. In the hardest chapters of his life, he realized that nobody was coming to save him, nobody was going to hand him a future, and nobody was responsible for his growth. He had to become the architect of his own life. He had to build something worth fighting for, starting from the foundation of who he was and who he wanted to become. A life worth fighting for is not built in comfort. It's not built in easy seasons or smooth roads. It's built through pressure, mistakes, setbacks, and adversity. The moments when everything feels heavy, when frustration becomes familiar, when doubt tries to poison your belief. These are the moments that shape you. These are the moments that either break you or build you. And the truth is, most people stop fighting because the fight gets hard. They want a meaningful life, but they don't want the sacrifice, the discipline, the late nights, the early mornings, the sweat, or the emotional battles that come with it. But you cannot create a powerful life without powerful effort. Dwayne's journey teaches that building a life worth fighting for is a long game. It requires patience. It requires consistency. It requires willingness to grow even when progress feels slow. Every chapter of your life is preparing you for the next, even when it doesn't feel like it. The failures are shaping your resilience. The setbacks are shaping your strategy. The losses are shaping your strength. Every difficulty has a purpose, and once you understand that, you stop running from challenges. You use them. A life worth fighting for demands clarity. You must know what you're building and why it matters. You can't fight for something vague, something uncertain, or something half-hearted. You need vision. You need purpose. You need a reason strong enough to keep you moving when the world tells you to stop. Without clarity, you drift. But with clarity, you move with direction, focus, and intensity. That clarity becomes your internal compass, guiding your decisions, your habits, and your actions. And once you know what you're fighting for, you must align your life with that vision. This means cutting out distractions, removing toxic influences, eliminating old habits, and breaking patterns that have held you back. You cannot create a powerful future while living with the limitations of your past. You must evolve. You must grow. You must become the type of person capable of carrying the life you want. A strong life requires a strong you. An extraordinary life requires an extraordinary you. Every decision you make is part of that construction process. The truth is, nobody drifts into greatness. You don't stumble into success, confidence, or fulfillment. You build it. You create it. You earn it through choices that require sacrifice and consistency. Dwayne didn't become who he is because life was kind to him. He became who he is because he refused to settle. He refused to be defined by circumstances. He refused to let his past dictate his future. He made choices every day, choices that aligned with the life he was committed to building. One of the most important parts of creating a life worth fighting for is surrounding yourself with the right people. You need people who challenge you, who push you, who inspire you, who hold you accountable, and who refuse to let you shrink. Most people never rise because they stay around people who encourage their limitations instead of their potential. The people you allow into your life shape your mindset, your habits, and your future. Choose them wisely. A powerful life requires a powerful circle. But even with support, you must be your own source of strength. You must learn to show up for yourself, to push yourself, to keep going when nobody is watching. A meaningful life isn't built in public, it's built in private. It's built in the quiet hours, the lonely moments, the unseen efforts, and the small decisions that compound into transformation. The world sees results, they don't see the grind. But the grind is what defines you. The grind is what prepares you. The grind is what builds the character necessary to hold the success you're working for. Creating a life worth fighting for also means understanding that pain is part of the journey. Not all pain is a sign to stop. Sometimes pain is a sign you're growing. It's a sign you're stretching beyond your limits. It's a sign you're becoming stronger. The discomfort you feel while building your future is temporary, but the regret of not trying lasts forever. Most people spend their whole lives avoiding discomfort, and in doing so, they avoid growth. They avoid progress. They avoid becoming the person they were meant to be. When you commit to building a meaningful life, you will face resistance. You will face setbacks. You will face moments where quitting feels easier than continuing. But a life worth fighting for isn't built on ease. It's built on resilience. It's built on the decision to rise again and again, no matter how many times life knocks you down. Dwayne faced rejection, failure, financial hardship, and disappointment. But he never stopped fighting for the future he believed in. That persistence is what changed everything. Another essential truth is that creating a life worth fighting for requires gratitude. You must appreciate the journey, not just the destination. Gratitude gives you strength in the struggle. It gives you perspective in the pressure. It reminds you that every step, even the painful ones, is part of your growth. When you learn to embrace the journey, you stop rushing through life and start building it with intention. And eventually, after months and years of effort, you begin to see the life you've been fighting for take shape. Not because it magically appeared, but because you built it with sweat, discipline, courage, focus, and resilience. A meaningful life is never given. It is created by someone who refused to quit. In the end, creating a life worth fighting for is about becoming the kind of person who deserves that life. It's about choosing strength over fear, effort over excuses, discipline over comfort, and growth over stagnation. When you live this way, you don't just build a future, you live yourself. And that is the most powerful thing you will ever fight for.